Episode 241, Time to Get Serious. This is the Change Underground for the week ending 21st of December 2020. Hi, I'm John Moore, your host. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Given everything we've been through this year, from the bushfires 12 months ago to the whole COVID thing, it's time that we all started to take the environmental stuff a bit more seriously. The change in government over in the US is a positive sign. Hopefully it'll lead to some change here in Australia. Our current federal government's more interested in maintaining votes in the coal centres in central Queensland than they are with actually making a difference. Fiji got hit with the heaviest cyclone it's ever had to face last week. Category 5, there's still reports coming in from outlying islands where entire villages have been flattened, as well as the rising sea levels around the world. So it's time to do stuff. It can be overwhelming. I mean, how many times have we sorted our rubbish into recycling, put them in different boxes, and then find out in the news 6 months later that there's been a supply problem, so everything just gets put into landfill. It's getting to be beyond a joke. And now I'm getting Philip Morris advertisements on other podcasts I listen to telling me that they're finally listening to the science and that they see an end to cigarettes in the next 10 to 15 years. It's just not believable. The message, though, from the pandemic as well as the fires is that leadership has failed quite often. And particularly with the pandemic, that the people that we most need are the ones that are treated worst in society. The cluster here in the northwest of Tassie, which I know pales into insignificance compared to the US and every European country, but it was based upon casualisation of labour, people having to work across 3 or 4 different locations just to make ends meet. It's time we started to realise what's important in life. Soil health would be a good place to start. Get the soil right, we get the food right, we get people's health right. We're getting those things right, then we can start to organise, at the same time probably, the economic situation. We should have known back from 2008-09 during the financial collapse when all the banks were bailed out, but the bankers still received their bonuses, even though they'd been responsible for the great mess that they caused, and yet they still got their bonuses, as if what they were doing was more important than anything else in the world. It's time for a change. Now we look back 100 years and we look at what happened in the 1920s after the allegedly Spanish flu at the end of the First World War. And it wasn't a time of thoughtfulness so much as wild excess. There's every possibility that the 2020s can be as wild as the 1920s. And they weren't called the Roaring Twenties for nothing. We will see. On a personal level, I think we have to see just what it is we can do each on our own. We can, other than maintaining pressure on our elected politicians and even electing different politicians. Clearly the 40 years of privileging the wealthy that started with Thatcher and Reagan, because there would be trickle-down, hasn't worked. We had a minor natural experiment in that couple of 18 months ago when they turned off the extra penalty rates that hospitality workers were getting on Sundays for having to work on Sundays when people should be home with their families. The argument was that by doing that, hospitality places would employ more people. Well, guess what happened? People got lower wages and the small businesses pocketed the difference. True enough, there were some that continued to pay the higher rates because that was the right thing to do. But that, in a nutshell, sums up trickle-down economics. It's time we started enforcing anti-corruption laws. The fact that the federal government paid $30 million for a $3 million piece of dirt at our new airport that's being built in Sydney is a sign of what's been going on. Now, all of these things can be quite overwhelming, but they are a sign that we need a change in our elected officials. Back to the personal level, and I think it's possible we can start doing things on our own. The supply chain issues and the fact that 80% of manufactured goods coming to some countries come from China highlights the error. Not that I've got a problem with the Chinese, what I have a problem with is the system. If you've only got one supplier and that supplier decides to change their mind or has an issue, we've all got a problem. Now, the most important things apparently were rice, flour for baking bread at home, and toilet paper. Now, we can't grow our own toilet paper, but we do have certainly plenty of gum trees in this country and plenty of gum leaves if push came to shove. Even flour and rice, we can grow wheat ourselves in most of Australia. Not enough for bread, but we can grow other things, and we don't actually need to live on bread alone. I think we need to all start growing some food, even if it's only herbs or a fruit tree or a nut tree, but we need to get started. We never know when the next pandemic's coming. We got lucky, it's been 100 years. SARS 1 and MERS and things like that, we were lucky they got stomped on early. Even with Ebola, we got lucky, because if that had have gotten out and about into the whole world's population, it would have made the Black Death look like a Sunday school picnic. And of course, I'm always reminded of Bill Mollison's quote that I've used a few times, that if only 10% of us move from consumption to production, there will be enough for everyone. Now, of course, I'd like to see 50% of us growing stuff, but 10% will be enough. 1 in 10 people with their front and backyards turned into veggie patches with some chooks and rabbits or some other form of small animal. I've been converted to ducks in the last 12 months. They are such gentle animals. They've got much better feet for regenerative rotational grazing on pastures, and they work really well. Plus the eggs are just magnificent. But 10% of us, that's all it takes. 1 in 10. It's not that hard. It's time. If you need a hand, I've got a course running over at World Organic News. Just go to the front page, all the details are there. But at least find something we can do, be it a craft, be it growing food. We could all find something to make our supply chain shorter. Even with Ebola, we got lucky, because if that had have gotten out and about into the whole world's population, it would have made the Black Death look like a Sunday school picnic. And of course, I'm always reminded of Bill Mollison's quote that I've used a few times, that if only 10% of us move from consumption to production, there will be enough for everyone. Now, of course, I'd like to see 50% of us growing stuff, but 10% will be enough. 1 in 10 people with their front and backyards turned into veggie patches with some chooks and rabbits or some other form of small animal. I've been converted to ducks in the last 12 months. They are such gentle animals. They've got much better feet for regenerative rotational grazing on pastures, and they work really well. Plus the eggs are just magnificent. But 10% of us, that's all it takes. 1 in 10. It's not that hard. It's time. If you need a hand, I've got a course running over at World Organic News. Just go to the front page, all the details are there. But at least find something we can do, be it a craft, be it growing food. We could all find something to make our supply chain shorter and more resilient, so that the important things like medicine, fuel, probably wheat when I think about it, for mass bread production and flour production, but so that supply chains are left free for those sorts of things. I've had some equipment arrive this year that took 6 months because the factory in Italy that was building it had to shut down while they were in lockdown. But everything's arrived. Just learn to pace things a little bit more slowly, and life falls into place. Getting back in touch with an agricultural flow through the year wouldn't be a bad thing anyway. And growing our own food is a great way to get in touch with this cycle of the year. So on that note, I'm going to draw 2020 to a close. There'll be one more episode between Christmas and New Year. But I think if we can just all think about doing something ourselves, just a little bit to start with. We won't all be experts at what we're doing, but we will get better at it as we do it. So as long as we remember to decarbonise the air and recarbonise the soil, we're going to be okay. Thanks for listening. Speak to you next time.